In the Chilean mountains, 9 witnesses entered a forest of living light. Then a luminous figure spoke, revealing a mission that linked us to the Inca and the Maya. Welcome to the channel My UFO Encounters. All the stories are based on real events. My field experiences, travels, and late-night studies, observations, and conversations with these beings from other planets. I'm fulfilling their request to bring the knowledge gained from all these years of conversations to all humanity. To this end, I create stories with guidance and knowledge from them. Welcome to this universe. Before we begin, write in the comments where you're watching from and what you believe about extraterrestrial contact. The mountain in Chile never felt quite empty to me. Even in broad daylight, it carried the quiet density of a place that remembers. On that evening, as we started the ascent, the air already held a subtle pressure, like a note we could not hear but all somehow felt. There were 9 of us, friends bound less by belief than by a willingness to remain silent together. We'd walked these switchbacks before, logging ordinary stars and extraordinary mistakes, training our nerves to meet the unknown without tearing it to pieces. But that night, before the first shadow fully lifted from the valley, I sensed a change in the posture of the land itself, as if the mountain were turning its ear toward us. We chose a ledge that opened to a wide arc of sky. The last amber of sunset dissolved into iron blue, then deepened toward black. We checked watches, compared headings, synchronized breaths, small rituals that anchor attention. The wind ran a cautious fingertip along the ridge and fell away. Insects thinned. The kind of hush that arrives like a decision began to form at the edge of hearing. We wrote it down. Time, temperature, sensation. Because you learn early that even silence has a clock. The first lights came low, almost shy. A pale point brightened near the horizon, held steady against wind, then dimmed without shrinking. Another answered somewhere to the left, then a third, as if the sky were testing whether we still remembered our lessons. We did, no one narrated. We wrote. The points returned, this time with color, soft green, honeyed amber, then a cool, deliberate white that hovered just above the tree line. It did not drift like a plane on approach. It didn't wobble like a star teased by atmosphere. It held patient, as though asking if we could. The ground joined the conversation. Between the dark trunks, tiny flecks of light began to pipe a car, popping in and out along bark and leaf litter like sparks shaken from a celestial blanket. One thread of brightness ran up a trunk beside me, turned the rough skin of the tree into a column of living emerald for a heartbeat, then vanished. Another flared at our feet, a coin of cold blue that made the dirt look like a mirror, and faded before anyone could whisper. Soon the slope below us glittered with quiet signals. Lines flickering, dots migrating, soft washes of color rolling under ferns and between stones as if the mountain had veins and the veins were awake. I raised my flashlight and swept the nearest trunk, expecting to catch a wire, a screen, a prankster's toy. Nothing, just bark, lichen, and a normal darkness that felt suddenly artificial by comparison. I aimed farther along the slope where a patch of violet had flowed like water seconds earlier. Again, nothing. No cables, no reflectors, no artifacts of ordinary. The forest lights returned the moment the beam clicked off, like animals stepping out when the truck drives away. The effect wasn't theatrical. It was intimate, spatial, astonishingly close, at my elbow, at my boots, sliding like quiet laughter through the undergrowth. Someone behind me breathed a half laugh, half prayer. It looks like a rave. It did, but the music wasn't sound. It was pressure and pacing. The lights pulsed in a rhythm that matched the slow expansion of our lungs, then shifted when our breath quickened, as if the scene itself were a metronome, and we were the hands learning to keep time. A point lifted from the tree line and drifted to join 2 others until a triangle hung in our periphery, steady enough to ignore the wind. We kept our gaze wide soft, field discipline, so attention wouldn't collapse into a tunnel and miss what the margins wanted to say. Then the forest spoke. Stop. The word was not loud, but it arrived with the authority of a door closing. It did not bounce around the rocks like an echo. It layered upon itself a chord more than a syllable. We stilled. The popping lights paused in sympathy, dimming into a dusk of their own. A faint fluorescence gathered where 2 trunks made a narrow gate. The way fog collects in a hollow, except this fog held shape. Lines coaxed themselves out of brightness. Shoulders, arms, an outline that suggested height and proportion without surrendering detail. I felt my jaw tighten, then release on its own as if a gentle hand beneath my face had loosened it. Warmth brushed the back of my hands, the same warmth that often preceded structured lights above open fields. The metallic tang, thin and electric, touched the tongue and withdrew. The figure did not step forward so much as the world stepped back to let him be clear. He was a silhouette of light at first, then a body whose edges emitted their own faint radiance like moonlit cloth. The air around him bent, the way summer air bends above a road, except the night was cool and the distortion felt intentional. It did not flash, threaten, or demand. It arrived as if we had kept an appointment without quite knowing we'd made one. I could feel 9 forms around me turn toward the same point, our small human circle answering an older geometry we did not design. No one spoke. The mountain listened. "I am here physically," the figure said, and the voice carried in that layered way again. Tones braided so closely the mind wanted to call it harmony. "We cannot extend this form for long. Conditions are not stable for me in this state." The words were simple, but the sensation that rode in with them was complex. A calm that widened the space inside the chest, a steadiness that made fear pointless, and a softness at the hinge of the jaw that kept language from hardening too quickly. Close, though close, is careful. Language for a presence that was both several steps away and somehow standing inside the room of our attention. The being was tall, slender, proportioned like a runner or a reed, not fragile, precise. The luminosity wasn't a spotlight cast upon him. It was a gentle self-emission that revealed contour without insisting on detail. I could not fix the face as a human face. I could fix the feeling. Attentive, patient, unsurprised. "You have met us by thought," he continued, "by patterned light, by what you call holography. Tonight you meet us by breath." The choice of words felt intentional. He did not say by sight, he said by breath, as if the point of being there was not optics but physiology, the body's ability to hold stillness without collapsing into drama. I realized my hands had stopped shaking. The pen resting against my palm had weight again. The forest lights, as if taking their cue from him, thinned to a faint glimmer at the edge of things like fireflies deciding to yield the stage. He tipped his head slightly toward the sky. "We have walked among those you call Inca and Maya. We teach observation and proportion, placement and resonance, the marriage of measurement with meaning. The signs remain where they left them, in alignment with sky cycles, in stones that sing when you stand at their foci, in shadows that answer the solstice with a blade of light." His hand rose slowly, palm open, and the phrase "stones that sing" bloomed into a memory I did not yet own. A courtyard where a whisper travels the perimeter and returns braided into itself. A staircase where the clap of a human hand becomes a living feathered note. "Search," he said, "not for spectacle, for method. Where you find proportion married to patience, you will find memory of us, in terraces that face the path of sun and in corridors tuned to the throat of the wind, in numbers that do not merely count but keep rhythm with the sky." I found my voice in the quiet he left. "Why speak with us now?" "Because repetition has ripened," he answered as if tasting the word. "You have practiced silence long enough to hear without defending, and breath long enough to meet without seizing. You seek to possess, but you are learning to participate. The ancients, Inca Maya, were not perfect, but they listened. You measure, they aligned. You chase proof, they trained capacity. We came to remind." His presence pressed a little closer, not forward exactly, but nearer in the felt sense, like a warmth moving up to the skin. "You will continue on your trail when I depart. There will be further movement around you. Do not harvest it for story before you harvest it for steadiness. Others will attempt to make you choose between belief and dismissal. Decline the choice. Choose practice. The method is the message." A glow passed through his outline the way a breeze moves through wheat. I realized I had a question my mouth hadn't formed. "Are we?" I hesitated, hearing how small the question was and asking it anyway. "Are we safe?" He didn't smile. If he had a mouth, it did not perform the expression the way ours do. But the answer arrived with a warmth at the center of the chest that could have been laughter's twin. "Safety is a posture. You have learned its outline. Long exhale, soft jaw, weight in the feet, attention wide. You will not be spared discomfort. You will be taught how to remain intact when the frame shakes." He looked toward the dark slope below us, where the tree trunks met like the ribs of a sleeping animal. "There are many who listen as you do. You are not special in the way the world means. You are not chosen. You are remembered. The statement landed like a key falling into a hand I had forgotten was open. The fear of being singled out, of becoming a symbol, a target, a fragile pedestal, drained. In its place, a simpler assignment appeared. Be one voice in a choir that does not care to count itself. Do you sense echoes of this teaching in ancient sites, sounds, alignments, proportions? Share which Inca or Maya place you believe still remembers and why. Search the terraces that speak with shadow, he continued, the corridors that multiply a whisper, the steps that turn a hand clap into a feathered call. Listen for the mathematics that behave like music. Where measure and meaning join, you will find our fingerprints, never as names, always as ratios. A shiver of light traveled his outline, like the last flare of a coal when it prepares to fold into ash. We cannot hold this form longer. The phrase came gently, not as apology, but as a reminder that frames, ours and his, have limits. Continue your path, breathe, watch, write, care for each other before you conclude. The clearing seemed to take a breath with him. The soft fluorescence concentrated until the silhouette brightened, then separated, not in pieces, but into a soft field of points that rose as one, merging with the starred skin of the sky until we could no longer tell which lights were ours and which belonged to the old dome. The hush deepened again, like a tide drawing back to show the wet sand it had polished. I became aware of my body with almost comic intimacy. The weight of the notebook in my hand, the way the strap of the backpack pressed into my shoulder, the thin film of cold along the skin of my neck where sweat had dried. Around me, 8 people released the same breath without rehearsing it. Pens scratched. No one said what we all wanted to say. We wrote what the method always asks first. The time, the temperature, the posture, the colors, the behaviors, the way the light had dimmed without retreat, the way the air had become a room. When we finally moved, it was as if our feet remembered the trail before our eyes did. The forest lights, respectful almost, returned to their distant flicker, keeping pace like attendants who prefer not to be seen. The mountain, satisfied we had kept our side of the appointment, settled back into its old gravity, and we, 9 small figures under a sky that had just opened like a book, began to walk. The silence after his departure had weight. It pressed into the skin the way altitude does, reminding the body that it had entered thin air. For a long moment, no one moved. The mountain hummed softly, like a string still vibrating after the note has been played. Someone's breath hitched. Another whispered something half prayer, half disbelief. I only wrote, the pen moving as if it knew better than I did what needed to be preserved. When we began walking again, our steps felt rehearsed, slow, and reverent. The air seemed to glow faintly, not with color now, but with density, as if each inhalation carried more substance than before. The lights among the trees had faded into distant pulses, like sentinels escorting us from afar. A few meters down the trail, one of the group turned back toward the ridge. He said, "We're remembered," she murmured, and the words landed heavier than they sounded. We finished the trail just before dawn. The world below us began to soften with early light, and ordinary sounds, birds, distant traffic, crept back into the field. They felt out of place, like waking in a borrowed body. I found a rock, sat, and opened my notebook again. The pages trembled with wind, but the handwriting stayed steady. I wrote every sensory detail I could recall: the pulse of the lights, the texture of the air, the taste of metal, the cadence of his speech. That night haunted us in the gentle way that awe haunts. Over the following weeks, I compared notes with the others. The similarities were unnerving. Everyone had written the same order of events, the same phrases, the same shifts in light. Even the temperature changes matched to the minute. We couldn't explain how the voice had carried or how the lights moved with such autonomy. Dreams came next. Always vivid, never chaotic. In them, I stood at the foot of ancient temples, the kind the being had mentioned. Stone steps under my feet, polished by time yet faintly warm as if holding the memory of sun. The air carried a hum that matched the rhythm of my pulse. When I looked up, the stars above the temple rearranged themselves into geometries I had seen in the forest. Triangles, spirals, lattices that folded inward like breathing shapes. Each night revealed another layer, In one dream, I walked through a Maya pyramid that pulsed like a living lung. The corridors echoed a low resonance, and when I whispered, the sound returned multiplied, woven with another frequency. I woke with tears and the distinct impression that sound itself was a form of code, one the ancients had mastered and we had forgotten. A month later, I traveled to Peru. I told no one my reason. The sacred valley greeted me with the same silence I had felt in Chile, a vast hush that exists beneath the noise of markets and footsteps. When I stood in the terraces of Ollantaytambo, I recognized the geometry, staircases that mirrored constellations, shadows that sliced through stone exactly at the hour he had described. I clapped my hands once, almost instinctively, and from the mountain across the valley the sound returned folded and melodic. Later in Mexico, the ruins of the Maya confirmed what the Inca had already whispered. The layout of the pyramids aligned perfectly with celestial markers, every step a fraction of some vast equation written in limestone. I remembered his words. Where measurement marries meaning, there we remain. The temples were libraries, and every angle was a paragraph written in the grammar of light. If you've ever visited an ancient site that felt alive, as if it remembered you, share it in the comments. Which place carried that silence? The more I studied, the clearer it became. Those civilizations had not worshipped gods. They had documented encounters. The feathered serpents, the solar deities, the sky messengers. They were metaphors carved in stone for moments like ours on that mountain. The ancients had built in the open what we now experience in secret. Their courage was architectural. Back home, I began translating my notes into stories, part memory, part protection. I kept the luminous being faceless, the mountain unnamed, the witnesses invisible, not to obscure truth, but to preserve it. Some truths only survive inside fiction, where belief and imagination can hold them without distortion. Years later, I can still feel the hum of that forest running under the skin, like a second pulse synchronized with something not entirely human. The encounter didn't grant me certainty, it dismantled it. I stopped chasing proof the way a miner chases gold. What I found instead was presence, a quieter, more durable kind of knowing that doesn't need to shout. The luminous being's instructions became a compass. Search for harmony, not control. At first it sounded poetic, but in practice it meant surrendering the hunger to dominate mystery. The ancients built their lives around that balance. We replaced it with conquest, noise, and theory. But the mountain, always patient, had offered a reminder. I've returned to Chile twice since then. The trail hasn't changed, though I have. When the wind slides through the trees in that particular tone, I know the pattern is still alive. Sometimes the forest gives small signs, a flicker of impossible color, a faint vibration underfoot, a sudden stillness among insects. They never repeat exactly as before. It's as if the phenomenon adjusts to each visit, asking, have you learned to notice without naming yet? When I tell this story, I tell it like this, without places, without dates, without proof. It's not because I doubt what happened, it's because the experience isn't a trophy. It's a mirror. Everyone who hears it sees a different reflection. Some find faith, some find fear. Some find the same quiet call that led us up that mountain. He had said, you are not chosen, you are remembered. The older I get, the more I understand. Remembering isn't nostalgia, it's responsibility. To remember is to act as if the connection never broke. The Inca remembered it in stone, the Maya in mathematics. The rest of us must remember it in behavior. Patience, listening, alignment. Final reflection. What if humanity's real evolution isn't technological but emotional? Our ability to stay calm in front of the extraordinary? Comment your thoughts and follow for more. I still write, though the pages have changed. The notebooks that once cataloged data now hold reflections, sketches of temples, and fragments of dreams that arrive like letters from the same place. Occasionally in meditation I hear that voice again, not external but resonant within the bones. Continue your path. Watch. Write. care before you conclude. The legacy of that night is not belief, it is practice. Every time I breathe slowly under a strange sky, I participate again. Every time I choose silence over argument, I repeat the lesson. The mountain still waits, patient as always, humming the same quiet invitation to anyone who will listen. Look up, soften, remember. The bridge was never broken. We were. And that night in Chile taught me how to start rebuilding, from breath to breath, from story to story, until the stars no longer look distant but familiar, like teachers waiting for their students to finally understand the lesson written in light. If this story caught your attention, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with those who are also fascinated by UFOs, and leave your thoughts in the comments. What do you think really happened?